Hey everyone, welcome to my channel on zero waste products and sustainable living. Today in this video I'm going to do two things. I'm going to open my new Misfits Market box. This is the Mischief box, my weekly subscription. And I'm going to talk to you about Misfits Market versus Hungry Harvest, my experiences with both companies, and what I'm going to do in the future as far as if I'm going to use only one or the other, both, or neither. Here we go. Alright, I have a recipe card for stuffed poblano peppers. I love poblano peppers. Okay, we do have some peppers, not poblano, but the ones I requested, these are just red bell peppers. 2 atolfo mangoes. We have fennel. There we go. We have some bok choy. I see some packages here. We'll open them up. This one says red plum on the top. Let's see how those look. Oh, yum. Check that out. Red plum. And in here, not sure what's in there. Oh, I see. Great. We have 4 Roma tomatoes. I've got a small head of lettuce. It's a little bit squished from the travel, but I'll salvage most of that. Got a small little group of chard. Oh no, that's not chard. Collard greens. Large white onion. I've got 3 red potatoes. 2 Valencia oranges, and 1 cucumber. So that is everything in my Mischief box for the last week of July 2020. Couple of substitutions, very, very slight. I have red plums instead of black plums, and here I have red potatoes instead of fingerling potatoes. So that's totally okay. This looks great. Can't wait to eat it. Thanks, Misfits. Okay, Hungry Harvest versus Misfits Market. If you're in the Northeast like me, there's a good possibility that you have access to both of these companies. Now, there's a lot of similarities between them, and the biggest one is probably that both Hungry Harvest and Misfits Market are trying to reduce the huge amount of food that gets wasted in the US every day. So Misfits Market and Hungry Harvest will buy surplus food from farmers. They will rescue food that grocers won't take because it doesn't look right, because it's, you know, too big, too small, too ugly, anything like this. They would buy that food that normally would be lost or could be wasted, and they deliver it to your door for a weekly fee or a bi-weekly fee, depending on what your subscription is. So I have some thoughts about both companies. I should mention up front that I've only received 3 boxes from Hungry Harvest and 4 from Misfits Market. So what I'm sharing with you guys is really just based on a very limited experience, but I'm going to share some objective information and then some subjective personal observations based on my boxes. I have a list here, so hopefully I don't forget anything. The biggest question probably is, well, how much do these boxes of fruit and veggies cost? Misfits Market has 2 options. You can buy a $22 box, Mischief, or you can buy a $35 box, Madness. Hungry Harvest has 3 options. It's got a mini harvest, a full harvest, and a super harvest. And those prices are $15, $25, and $33. Now that's just a conventional harvest, non-organic is what I mean by that. So if you look at the biggest box for Hungry Harvest and the biggest for Misfits, you're getting about the same amount of produce. Misfits cost $35 and Hungry Harvest now only costs $33, so slight price difference there. Remember that Misfits Market is always organic. They only do organic produce, whereas Hungry Harvest you can choose a conventional harvest, non-organic, or you can choose organic. Just to be fair, I have received some organic items in my conventional harvest, but I think what they're trying to say is most of these items are non-organic. So those two prices, $33 for your super harvest non-organic and $35 Misfits for your Madness box organic. Okay, that's a pretty competitive price, but take into consideration that Hungry Harvest gives you free shipping with the biggest box. Misfits does not, so you pay $4.50 in shipping. So you're looking at a price between $33 and $39.50. Now, the price difference begins to grow, but if you're interested in organic produce, I think Misfits is really the way to go because Hungry Harvest's largest organic box is $42. So if you're going organic, you definitely want to go with Misfits based on price alone. But let's get to some other factors because we know it's not just price for some people that they might be interested in. So we mentioned the price, the fact that Hungry Harvest is you can choose organic or you can do conventional, whereas Misfits is only organic. And so let's talk about accessibility. If you live in an urban area in the Northeast, there's a possibility that Hungry Harvest will deliver to you. Misfits, however, is really reaching out to multiple states, and not just in the Northeast, in the South, moving into the Midwest, and they're doing this because one of the biggest parts of their mission is to reach as many people as possible, and that might include people in food deserts. We're talking about an area where people can't get like affordable fresh food very readily, and the thing to keep in mind about food deserts is that they disproportionately affect Black communities and Latino communities. So the fact that Misfits is trying to reach out to everybody, to as many states as possible, I think is very admirable. Speaking of accessibility, when I signed up for Hungry Harvest, they told me that my box would be delivered on Saturdays because that's the day they are in Philadelphia. Great, okay, that works for me. When I signed up with Misfits, it was, which day would you like your delivery to be delivered on? So I thought that was really cool, and that could be very appealing for people who maybe don't have weekends free, you know, who might be out all day on a Saturday and don't love the idea that their produce box could be sitting there, you know, for hours before they get home. So I think Misfits does allow for more flexibility in that regard, but the thing to keep in mind is that this inevitably means that Hungry Harvest has a lower carbon footprint because they're doing all of their deliveries for a certain area on a certain day. Speaking of deliveries, Hungry Harvest has their own delivery service. So the person who brings me my produce is just a person who is based out of Philadelphia. He, I believe, drives his own van, and he's got all his Hungry Harvest produce boxes in the van, and he's able to deliver usually between like 10 and 11 a.m. Every Saturday when I get my box. With Misfits, they rely on third-party like shipping companies like FedEx and LaserShip. So sometimes my box gets delivered early-ish, and other times it's later in the day. Just, I guess, depending on how many deliveries that truck has or what the route of that truck is supposed to be. So not necessarily a negative thing because you can choose your delivery day with Misfits, but just keep in mind that it's less easy to maybe establish a pattern as far as when your delivery will arrive. One of the coolest things I think about Hungry Harvest is actually probably a very small thing and we're thinking about every aspect of the company, and that's the fact that because they have their own like personal delivery person, that person can text me when they're like 5 minutes away so I can go to the porch and meet them to pick up my harvest. Okay, so we talked about organic versus non-organic, we talked about prices, we talked about deliveries, what else did we talk about? We talked about carbon footprints, we talked about accessibility. But let me move on to the green impact of Misfits and Hungry Harvest. So Misfits is definitely greener than Hungry Harvest for a couple of different reasons. Misfits, for one, does not rely on big agriculture. This means they acquire all of their produce from small farms. The CEO of Hungry Harvest has admitted that Hungry Harvest does purchase from what's called big agriculture, but to be fair, that's a minority of the produce that they purchase. So when we say big agriculture, we're talking about obviously larger farms nearing like corporations that have a lot more power, that have the potential to put smaller farms out of business just because there's a sheer power imbalance there. So therefore, not giving more power to these big agricultural farms, I think is a positive thing. So therefore, I really appreciate that Misfits is keeping their business model small so that they can access more people responsibly and sustainably. And speaking of green, Misfits keeps the entirety of the packaging of the box recyclable. So it's not just like the box itself, but the kind of insulation they use. It's made out of a paper material that you can throw into your recyclable bin. Anything like the plastic that might come with it, the plastic bags, like that insulation is going to be cased in like a plastic liner, that can be recycled as well. The little produce bags they use if you get a small object that they want to try to like keep separate. So for green beans, for example, these are in a biodegradable green like little plastic bag, so better for the environment than something that will not biodegrade. And the ice packs are drain safe. Misfits also has these little compostable boxes that they might keep softer produce in, like tomatoes or plums or apricots. So all of that, I actually use those to line my compost bin, so it's like an easier pickup every week, and it's easier to clean out the compost bucket once a week after the pickup. So I can either reuse, compost, biodegrade anything that is in my Misfits box that's not like the produce itself. So I think that's really cool and very green. Okay, last 2 points I have for you are about customization, that is choosing which produce you get every week, and substitutions. So what happens when you request an item and they cannot fulfill that item when they're packing up the boxes. With Hungry Harvest, you can customize your boxes. I believe for the smallest box, the mini, you pay a small customization fee, but for the Full Harvest and the Super Harvest, you can customize right before you get a box. So I can choose which items I want to keep that they've recommended for me, which ones I can leave out if I want to add on anything extra, and it's very easy. With Misfits, it's a little trickier because Misfits did not used to offer customization options, and they're slowly starting to incorporate customization into select groups of clients. I was lucky enough to have ended up able to customize my box from the first one, so that's not been a problem with me. My parents, who are using Misfits in Florida, they had the same experience. They have always been able to customize their box. So great if you end up in a group that has customization options. If you don't, you get a surprise every week. From what I've read and from what I've been told, after a certain number of orders, your customization window opens. Customization can be a little trickier with Misfits, but if you are lucky and you wind up in a group that can customize, you can have that from the get-go. And the last thing is substitutions. So as we said, what happens if you request an item and they cannot fulfill that request? Weirdly enough, with Hungry Harvest, I have never received a substitution for an item. I thought I did once. I thought I got all lemons instead of lemons and oranges, but when I cut into them, I realized some of them were lemons and some of them were oranges, despite the fact that they looked identical from the outside. Now with Misfits, on the contrary, I've actually had at least one substitution in every box. So I really don't mind if I ask for like red lettuce and they give me green lettuce. Who cares? If they give me black plums instead of red plums, great, it's still a plum. Once I did have a slightly inconvenient customization with kale and lettuce, so I had 2 big heads of romaine lettuce that looked really good, and they could not fulfill my request for kale, so they couldn't do like Tuscan kale or curly kale or red kale, anything like this, so they had to give me lettuce, and they gave me this red leaf lettuce, so I think I had 4 heads of lettuce for that week, and it was just, you know, I was putting lettuce in everything, like smoothies, and, and I just realized I'm not going to be able to get rid of this lettuce, so we gave some to the neighbors, and it was all fine. So what I want to say about substitutions is that we are not super picky, so I don't really look at substitutions as something negative. I've not had an experience where I was really, really hoping for something and then not gotten it, but I know that will happen eventually. That's just the nature of things, as it will with Hungry Harvest, you know, when we keep like getting from them. But yeah, so this is possible, And I really think that this is due to the fact that Misfits is a much newer company. Which company seems like it's, you know, has more positives, has more pros? And like my answer is, I don't know. It depends on what you're looking for. If you're doing entirely on price and you don't care about getting organic produce necessarily, then the answer has got to be Hungry Harvest. If you are looking for something that has a better, greener, and like, you know, moral mission, how green it is and how many people it's reaching and like the good it's actually doing, it's got to be Misfits, you know. So yeah, it depends on what you're looking for. And because of that, I just feel like I wanted to keep both companies. And, you know, I think one thing to add about Misfits Market is that it is much newer than Hungry Harvest, as I mentioned. Misfits came out in 2018. Hungry Harvest has been around since 2014. So when Misfits starts to expand and, you know, is able to reach more people, they will have more variety and they will be able to, you know, consider things like dropping their prices or having their biggest box shipped for free. So it's a really good company that's, I think, doing the best of any like produce subscription boxes that I've been reading about online. So I'm really happy to keep them in my life, to keep their fruits and veggies in our bellies. So if you're interested in one or both of these companies, as I mentioned, I think they're both really great as far as, you know, what they're trying to do. There is plenty of debate on whether or not these like produce subscription companies are doing more harm than good. You can read about all of that. I found 4 articles out there: Forbes, The Atlantic, The New Republic, and like one called like Culinary something. So there's plenty of opinions out there. There's plenty of interviews. Go out and read them if you're interested to see if this is something you think that you would like to get, would like to explore. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Those are my opinions about Hungry Harvest and Misfits Market. I hope you decide to try one or both of these companies. And yeah, if you have any comments, anything you think I missed as far as pros and cons, please drop a comment or let me know, and it would be cool to talk about those things. So thank you for watching. Happy harvesting, happy marketing, and I'll catch you guys later.